with Miss Kemi, and we're going to talk about some special topics about our African communities and how important it is to have a great relationship with your children within your home, and how effective that will be in a transparent to the outside world. So, Miss Kemi, would you please like to introduce yourself and tell this beautiful people that are watching today how we met, our relationship, and if you want to add on to other things that we're going to touch base on today.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Miss Kemi Seriki. I name myself Miss Kemi Seriki because I actually do intergenerational dialogue. And as we know, within African immigrant community, respect is also very important, whether to the adults or to every member of our community. That's why I tend to introduce myself in such manner. So I'm a parent. I've been in this country in America since early 80s. I have two children of my own, a boy and a girl. When I came to this country, I actually didn't get married or have children immediately when I came compared to many other African immigrant parents. And it took me about 10 or 12 years before I had my first child. And that allows me to be able to integrate and navigate through this environment, the complexity of American society, and understand some of the challenges that I might face when after I give birth to my children. So as my children were growing up, I thought I knew everything, but I know that I didn't actually know everything, because what you were brought up with from your home country is what you carry on. The culture that makes you who you are is what you carry on till today, till every part of your life. So as I was raising my children, I saw a lot of conflicts coming in, and not also understanding American society. How do you raise children? How do you have an open communication dialogue with your children? So as time goes on, struggling, trying to make ends meet, also as a single parent, raising two children, by myself with the help of community that I, built around me and my children, which I would tell a lot of Africans, when you said your community, you're building community, not only your fellow Africans, also Caribbeans, also African American, also white, Asians, name it. Those are your connection, are your support network that you could support each other. So from there, I started seeing a lot of conflict. And as my children are growing, I said, you know what? I think we need to have this kind of open dialogue within African immigrant community. So I started within New York City, where one of my sessions, Miss Miriam also was present to present herself. Actually, somebody introduced me to her and said, you need to meet this young lady who has been also talking about issue within African immigrant community, about intergenerational relationship between African parents and their children. I said that would be great. So she came to one of my forum where we have a deep discussion about so many issues that is affecting our community. So that's how we met. And since then, I've been holding community events, but when COVID hit, I couldn't hold the community event anymore. So I then converted it to uh, YouTube, not really YouTube, doing Zoom conversation, where I now have podcast called Pansa Pansa podcast. Pansa Pansa in my language means uncomfortable dialogue, because those are the conversations that we have in there. And we've had so many discussions. We have parents group session, children's group session, whereby other people from other states also join in. That's the benefit of having conversation on the podcast. I had parents group where parents from different states also join in, from different part of Africa, that we discuss some of the struggle that we go through as parents. And then we had children's session from different countries where they came in and talk about the challenges that they also going through as a child, trying to balance between two worlds of Africa, having African immigrant background from growing up in African immigrant parents' home, as well as what it is to navigate through the American society or any other society that they might find themselves in the diaspora. So let me just, stop that introduction right there. Then I'll hand it over. now to my host.
Thank you so much for sharing all that you shared. We really appreciate you for coming on here today. And I'm sure we're going to learn so much from you today, being that it's back to school. And I feel like this is the right time to have this conversation, especially for our community, right? So, we're very thankful that you have come to, really educate us about the importance of having an effective relationship with your children inside the house, and also teaching them about the culture that you carry on even when you are in a different country, not just the United States of America, but in any country. When I feel like when we travel, we have to make, and we have children, we have to make sure that we talk to our children about our culture and not just assume that they're the citizens of that country that we are in. And because when you do that, you kind of are taking away the richness of what they could learn about their own culture. And remember, this is when you teach your children about the culture, it's a ripple effect, because when they have children, they'll teach those children about the culture that you have taught them. So that's how you keep the culture within the family and within the generation. But when it's not spoken about, then it gets lost in the mist. So thankful that you're here, and we're going to have this wonderful conversation, as I mentioned before. And as you all know, my name is Miriam, and I'm a life development coach. Again, I am focused on the African community, especially the immigrants and the youth, and also young professionals. And my specialties is to help them be able to navigate the system, and to understand the power of their dreams, and to have resilience, and also to know the importance of being who you are and embracing their journey. So, Miss Kemi, the first question I want to ask you, or the first topic I want us to talk about, is that, and I think you mentioned this already, how important do you think it is for our African community to have an effective communication with their children within the home?
It's very effective because as a parent, I know many of us, we grew up back home whereby the whole community raised the children. When I was growing up, we have age mates whereby you intermingle, you associate with your age mates, and then you could share ideas. This is a society whereby everybody has some similarities in culture. I'm from Nigeria, I could live in Ghana. I could still connect with the similarity of the culture. I could live in South Africa. I could still connect with the similarity of culture, because it takes a village in African society. But in America, there's no village. Your village is within your own home. You might belong to a mosque that maybe many African immigrant goes there, that they come from like Guinea. All of you are in the same mosque. You might belong to a church where most of you are from the same community or diversity of different places from Africa in the diaspora. But the issue is being that this society, most of the time, there's no grandma, there's no aunts, uncles, and everybody else to actually understand what your children may be going through emotionally. And if you don't address a lot of all those issues, it could blow up in another sense. Because back home, when I was growing up, it's all about actually giving you the direction. Mm-hmm. Parents just talk to give the direction. Mm-hmm. But in the Western world, whether you are in America or anywhere in the diaspora, in Europe, anywhere where you want to talk about, now in this modern day, even in Africa, we have to be able to be open up, to have a dialogue, to know what our children are actually feeling, to understand, to listen to them. And when I'm saying listening in not in sense of having to listen to give answer back. Mm-hmm. Because there's a different way of listening. I could listen to you because I want to give a response. Mm-hmm. But I could also listen to you. I want to understand your emotion, where you're coming from. My children were the one who taught me this. Mm-hmm. And your body language, when your children are talking, is very important. Mm-hmm. I know I've said it many times on my podcast, whereby there was a day my son was talking to me and he said, I want to talk to you. And I said, yes, okay, I'm sitting here. Come and talk to me. And he looked at my body language and my facial expression, and he said, forget it. He said, even your body language and facial expression already told me you already make up your mind.
Mm-hmm.
So then I have to learn and say, okay, how do I change things around? How do I learn to listen
Mm-hmm.
attentively,
Mm-hmm.
to say, I understand you, I hear you?
Mm-hmm.
How do I do that? Because as a parent, when you are open like that, you could also have a disagreement with your children. With my kids, sometimes they say, oh, I don't want to talk to you anymore because, the advice you might give me, I may not like it.
Mm-hmm.
Out of some of this interview I've done with many of our African immigrant children who were born here or brought here at a very young age,
Mm-hmm.
I remember talking to a young lady from Liberia, and she said, she gave me another thing that I learned from. She said, my mother was, when she were in within our home, she was, always talking back when I want to talk to her, but she learned a better way to listen to me.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever I said, Mom, I want to talk, and she will first ask me, do you want my advice or you just want me to listen? And she would tell the mom, okay, I just want you to listen. I may not need your advice.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the things that we as African parents need to understand. We're dealing with a different society, and I know many of us work a lot. We may say, oh, I have to pay the bills, I have to do this, I have to do that. But then when we are busy paying the bills and working long hours, who else will have the time to listen to our children? Do we want them to seek those help from outside, from somebody that may not, give them a good direction or a good listening ear? Because they stay with you, they are with you all the time. So when they are able to express yourself, they are able to express themselves, then both parents could work out, both parents and the children could work out a better way of doing things.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just, my advice on this.
Thank you so much for sharing because that all that information for us. And I can, as I'm listening to you and writing things down, I can relate to you to what you're saying in so many different ways, not as a mother, but as a child whose mother sacrificed everything to come to the US to raise us, right? And give us a better life in terms of education, especially. And one of the things, two things I got from what you've said is that a lot of times I had to learn this, not as a mother, but as an individual. I had to learn that, it's important to listen with the need to understand, right? So a lot of times when people are having conversations with their children, they're listening just for the children to stop talking and to start telling the child what to do and start telling the child how they should feel. Remember, this child is your child, but everyone is unique and they have their own feelings. So for example, I have encountered a situation where the child came from school and was explaining to the mother what had happened in school. And instead of the mother listening to the child effectively about what had happened in school, she was just quick to really say that it was his fault. Just make an assumption saying that it was his fault, what happened, he didn't listen to the teacher, and so on and so far. And that child felt like he didn't have anywhere to go, and he felt like he didn't have a person who was supportive of what had happened to him. So in the long run, what happened is that this child started to get involved in with people outside, people who are not good for him, people who he thought were family, people who he thought would protect him no matter what. And again, it went as far as the child ended up ending up in juvenile detention center. And when he was interviewed about how he ended up there, why he's so angry and all this stuff, he then started to talk about how he did not feel like his parents were listening to him about what was happening, and the people who were outside were the one that were protecting him, and they were the one that were listening to him, to a point where he said that he felt more comfortable with them, and he felt like they would take a bullet for him. So for him to go that far to have saying that he thought that people outside would take a bullet for him was a little, that really touched me, because I'm like, how bad could it have been within the home for him to go outside and feel that way. But if I was to compare myself to that, I would say that I've been very, very, very lucky, and I've been very, very blessed because though I did face my own adversity outside, and I felt my own uh what is it, traumatic experience of being bullied and all that stuff outside. When I came into the home, my mother was there for me. She was there to listen to me, though she did not understand the culture, the American culture at the point. But she always said to me, one day this will all be over. That was her way of supporting me, and that was her way of letting me know that, listen, I cannot do anything for you about what's going on with you outside, but I want to let you know that and understand that within this home, behind these walls, you are safe, right? You are safe in this home, and you are safe with me. Because I went home to a home cooked meal, and my mom, she helped us with our homework with the little that she knew, which was math, because she couldn't read or write, right? But she was very, very knowledgeable, and she had the eager to learn, right? So if she couldn't even know how to she didn't even know how to really write her name, but she learned all of that. But my point is, she made the home very safe for me. And till the day where she left us, I literally didn't have any friends, because she was my best friend. That was the only person where I hung out with. She was the only person where I spoke with. And no, we did not have a sweet relationship. It was a mother and daughter relationship, of course.
Of
I had
course.
my own ways and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, she was my best friend. And she is even the reason why I still speak another dialogue, because when I went home after school, I spoke English to her. Was my transitioning time, because I came at the age of 9 years old. So when I went home and I tried to speak English with her, she wouldn't answer me back. She said, nope, you're going to speak in our dialogue, and you're going to speak to me in that dialogue. I don't speak any other language. So she forced me to continue to speak in our dialogue. And I'm so grateful for that today, because now I not only speak one language, but I speak two languages. And I'm even more thankful because I can actually teach my own children how to speak another dialogue, and I can communicate with them in another dialogue, right? So I have been blessed enough. And because of my blessing, this is why I feel like it is so important that we talk about this. And I telling you my own story to show these parents that that's how important it is to, tell your children about the culture and make them feel safe at home, and listen with the need of understanding, listen with the intention of understanding, not just always trying to make them feel like they were in the wrong of doing things. Even when the teacher calls you from school and tells you that your child did something, it is important to always listen to their side of the story, because it takes two, right? To argue, it takes two. To fight, it takes two. To do anything, even our tongue and our teeth fights, right? So I think it's very, very important as a parent, especially right now that there's back to school. This is a back to school time in September. It is very important to ask your child how the first day of school went. That question goes a long way. I feel like I do understand that a lot of parents are not home um on the first day when the child comes back from school, because that they're at work and they have things to do. I know bills needs to be paid, but when you see that child even in the morning, just ask them, how did the first day of school go? But there are so many children, if you would ask them, did your mom ask you or your dad ask you how the first day of school went, they would say nothing. They just expect them to go to school as their first day, drop them at the bus stop, you know or whatever it is, and then that conversation just never happens. So I'm glad that you share what you share what you have shared with us, and I just wanted to share my part of the story and how blessed I have been to come here. And I hope that whoever is listening to me right now would take my blessing into consideration and apply the same thing to their children or within their family, to help them become who they would become, and to try to avoid the children going to get validation from the outside resource.
And I'm so happy that you mentioned something about joining gangs and, getting involved in illegal activities, because like you said, even we as adults, when you only navigate through towards people who will listen to you, who care about you, So caring sometimes for many of us African parents, I think the only thing that we need to provide our children is the shelter and the food. Everything else is secondary because that's how we grew up. But does not mean the way you grew up, you have to raise your children. There's certain part of our culture that is so important that we continue to instill, like so powerful, your mom with the language that she instill in you and say, speak to me in my dialect, speak to me in that language. Does not mean you couldn't speak English. You speak English perfectly well now. So it's something that we continue to practice, but there's certain things that we have to modify, just like your mother modified that in terms of, okay, what happened? Talk to me. That's why you were so close to her, that you feel like, everything that bothers you, you could talk to her about it. So, and that is very powerful. And I hope many people who listens to this will also follow through and say, you know what, let me also try to practice that. One thing I will give some tips to some parents. When when my children were growing up, my son, immediately when he graduated college, said, I want to live on my own. I said, bye. Good for you. And he's living on his own.
I think we
For
all said that. We want to go away.
yeah, they went, both of them went away to college. So when he came out of college, he found a job. He said, I want to live on my own. I said, okay, I could only give him that support. And, till now, it's been 5-6 years now. He's been living on his own. One thing that I did during my own time when my children were growing up, when I picked them up from school, I don't answer nobody's phone call. Okay, there's no TV going on. I'm not on the phone, and they won't be on the phone either. So at that time when I picked them up, they both of them want to talk about their days, even before I ask them anything. And they want to talk. Oh, this is what happened in school. This is how my day went. And when they come home, it's time to do homework. There's no TV going on. All of us are talking. We're eating, preparing for the next day. And as a parents, one thing we ourselves have to discipline ourselves. Our children watch what we do. It's not when they are home that they're having conversation, that somebody else is calling you, then you shut the conversation down. That is much more important. Whatever it is that your friend or family, every other person, I always tell people, unless it's emergency, don't call me, because I won't pick up my phone during those times, because that's the time that I have with my children. And from there, they too, they could have a rest of a mind to be able to concentrate on doing their own work, on actually feeling comfortable talking to us. Because when somebody else calls us from outside, maybe one of our friends or a family member, we having that long conversation with them, a lot of things around us we're ignoring. I remember when my son was in middle school, I usually have the computer in the foyer, the area where we could pass back and forth. And that time they used to have AOL, where you have a small chat box on the side. And one day he was doing his own work, and I saw that he was on the chat box with his friend. And I said, didn't I tell you, do your own work instead of being on that chat box? He said, oh, you just came up. I said, okay, what I'm going to do now, I'm going to shut the computer off. 5 a.m. tomorrow, I'm going to wake you up so that you could do your own work an hour before we leave home. And he said, oh my God, how can you do that? I said, yeah, that's what I already told you. But imagine if I was on the phone with somebody. Will I know whether he was doing his own work the way he's supposed to do it? So it's very important to, we as a parents to also discipline ourselves. That's very important.
I'm so glad that you brought the whole phone situation up. But before I get to that, I want to touch base on something you said earlier when you first started speaking. And you mentioned that when the children speaks to you, and it's important to ask them if they want your advice or if they want you to listen. That is another thing that my mom always said to me, and I will be honest with you, when she said that to me, I got mad. I said, why are you asking me if I want your advice or if you want me to if you want me to listen to you, don't you want to listen to me? At the young age, I didn't understand what she was doing. I just thought that she was annoyed with me, or as she always says, I have an answer for everything. So I thought she was saying that because she just thought that, okay, I'm going to give her advice and she's going to give me another answer. So this is going to go on for another 4 hours. So I thought of all of those things, but I didn't really understand what she was doing until I got older, and and I started to grow in my professional and personal life and dealing with so many people, and even youth and children. Then I started to understand what she really meant by saying to me, okay, Ma, she called me Ma, everybody calls me Ma. Ma, do you want me to give you advice or do you want me to listen to you? And a lot of time my my answer was listen to me, because I didn't want to hear the advice that she was going to give me. So it was always just listen to me. But after she finished listening to me, I'm like, why didn't you say anything? She was like, you want me to listen to you? Why would I say anything? So it was always something with me. I was just never happy with anything that she does and never appreciated anything she does. But until I, grew up and became a responsible adult, because it took me a while to adult. Okay, I'm still adulting, but it took me a while to adult, and I now understand that why she was doing that, right? Because it's sometimes people just want listening ears. Even children, they just want you to listen. Sometimes I've again encountered a situation where a child was talking to the mother, and then I guess the mother felt like the child was speaking for too long, and the mother immediately cut the child off and said, are you done yet? I've been listening to you for so and so time. And you could just see the child just shutting down in that moment of time, just completely shutting down, and said, I'm sorry, mom. Like the child just started to apologize, and my heart was so broken. And then immediately I thought to myself, what was going on with her that was so important other than listening to her child? I really do understand that as adults we have so much responsibilities, and sometimes kids can just add on to it. I do understand that, but we have to also understand that when we are not there for those kids, and when we are not listening to them with the intention of understanding, when we are not giving them chances to express themselves, when we are not giving them chances to be who they are, what they want to be, when we're not being supportive of what they want to do, and when we're not being supportive of the changes that they want to make in their life. I'm not saying watch your child do bad things or do unethical things. No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying be involved in what they are doing. When we are not doing that, we are asking them or pushing them to go outside of the home to go and find validation outside. And this sometimes is over the social media. I mean, now the internet is really easy. Pick up the phone, message somebody, and immediately you two are friends, right? So they're going to just run into strangers and try to get validations from them. So it's very important to really, be a great listener and make sure that when your child, again, I'm not saying do it every time, but sometimes you might say to them, do you want my advice? Do you want my feedback? Or you just want me to listen to you? Because as children, like I just shared my own experience, when they do pick the I just want you to listen part, eventually by the end of the conversation, they're going to say to you, why aren't you saying anything? So now you have a chance to give your advice, right? So at least make them feel like they have a choice when they're speaking to you. But when you leave a child with no choice, it just, again, you are pushing them away every time you do it. So I'm glad that you share that part, and I hope anyone that's listening knows that it's very important to understand that, every time a child comes to you to speak, they don't always need your advice. Just listen, and when they're done, they'll just walk away. Eventually they'll come back and ask you for your advice, because you're their parents and they have nowhere else to go.